Hell, widely known as a location in the afterlife in which evil souls are subjected to punitive suffering, often through torture as eternal punishment after death. A place you probably don't want to wind up in. The concept of hell has existed for millennia, with different interpretations stemming from ancient Mesopotamia, Egypt, Greece, Rome, and beyond. However, there is a more specific idea that hell lies beneath our own very feet, buried deep within the Earth's core. This version of it that's uncomfortably close to us reached new heights in the early 1990s, when whispers of a deep boring drill that made its way into hell began to surface. According to the legend, a team of Russian geologists drilled a nearly 14.5 kilometer or 9-mile deep hole in the permafrost-covered ground of a remote region of Siberia. Upon reaching the 9-mile depth, their drill began to spin wildly, indicating to those above it that it had broken through into an open pocket or a larger area. The individual leading the team of Soviet engineers overseeing this drill was known as Mr. Azakov. Upon realizing they had discovered a potential underground anomaly, he instructed his crew to lower extremely heat-resistant measurement tools into the abyss, including several microphones. To the shock and awe of the geologists, the temperatures gauged at the bottom of their hole measured a staggering 2,000 degrees Fahrenheit. But that wasn't even the most shocking data returned. The microphones had recorded inexplicable sounds, voices, screaming, wailing, unmistakably human sounds that were somehow being echoed 9 miles beneath the surface in an environment that not even the most stubborn of life on Earth could withstand. After hours of review and potential hypotheses, no concrete conclusions within our realm of science could be reached. This defied everything the engineers expected and knew. The only potential explanation strayed into the realm of the supernatural, that they had drilled into hell itself and heard the tortured screams of the damned. According to some versions of the legend, most of the engineers and scientists quit the job site immediately. There are even rumors that the on-site medics were instructed to administer mild sedatives to erase the team's short-term memories, which is cited in an explanation for why this story didn't instantly become front-page international news. The origins of the legend are contentious at best. At some point in 1989, the original well-to-hell story was being propagated by an unknown author. This eventually led to it being picked up and circulated by several Christian publications and broadcast networks, most notably being adapted for television by the Trinity Broadcasting Network, where it was presented as fact and aired alongside the title, Scientists Discover Hell. During this same period, a Norwegian teacher named H. Rendelin was visiting the United States when he caught a glimpse of the Trinity broadcast. Disgusted with what he perceived to be mass gullibility, he decided to fabricate his own version of the tale and claimed that he discovered it in Norway's largest and most reputable newspaper. His version added some new wrinkles to the story. Here's an excerpt from his fictitious article. What really unnerved the Soviets, apart from the voice recordings, was the appearance that same night of a fountainhead of luminous gas shooting up from the drill site. And out of the midst of this incandescent cloud pillar, a brilliant beam with bat wings revealed itself with the words, in Russian, "I have conquered," emblazoned against the dark Siberian sky. The incident was absolutely unreal and the Soviets cried out in terror, says Mr. Nomodel. Later that night, he saw ambulance crews circulating in the community. A driver he knew told him that they had been told to sedate everybody with a medication known to erase short-term memory. The Soviets used this drug in the treatment of shock victims. When Mr. Rendelin submitted his fictitious and sensationalized version of the tale back to the Trinity Broadcast Network, they aired it as proof without any further verification, effectively proving his initial sentiment that the network was a sham. Despite this, there was a legitimate buzz surrounding the story in the early 1990s. In 1992, the US tabloid Weekly World News published an alternative version of the legend, which was set in Alaska and claimed that 13 oil rig workers were killed when the devil came roaring up and out of the ground. Even surviving the 90s, the legend made appearances in the early days of the internet and on talk show radio. In 2002, our Bell of Coast to Coast AM received a copy of the recordings that were supposedly captured 9 miles beneath the surface during the fabled drilling operation. It came alongside a message that read, "I just recently began listening to your radio show and could not believe it when you talked about the sounds from hell tonight. My uncle had told me this story a couple of years ago and I didn't believe him. Like one of your listeners who discounted the story as nothing more than just a religious and newspaper fabricated account. The story about the digging, the hearing of the sounds from hell, is very real. It did occur in Siberia." My uncle collected videos on the paranormal and supernatural. He passed away fairly recently. He let me listen to one of the audio tapes that he had on the sounds from hell in Siberia, and I copied it. He had received his copy from a friend who worked at the BBC. Attached is that sound from my uncle's tapes. The audio can be found on YouTube, though it has been examined and debunked by the website Skeptoid. The sound file apparently uses looped recordings of screams, and the sound bites are thought to be from an Italian horror movie titled Baron Blood. And while the entire story may seem far-fetched and baseless, it does appear to be predicated on a legitimate drilling operation. In the 1980s, the Soviet Union had in fact drilled a hole more than 12 kilometers or 7.5 miles deep, known as the Kola Super Deep Borehole, and it was located on the Kola Peninsula, not in Siberia as many versions of the legend claim. While some interesting geological anomalies were discovered, there were no reports of supernatural encounters. Regardless of whether the tale has any authenticity or not, it's an extremely interesting case study into the potential development of an urban legend, rising up originally with a basis in reality, but perhaps being altered for entertainment value, being spread in print media before making the leap to television, and even being admittedly purposely altered in order to prove a point. And the version of stories that reach our ears may be leaps and bounds different than the original interpretation. What are your thoughts on the well to hell? Is there even a sliver of a chance that it is some truth to it? Even if it doesn't, could there be things beneath Earth's surface that lie beyond our explanation? Let me know in the comments down below. Thank you all once again for watching to the end, and make sure to stay tuned for next week's video.